Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be I Married the Woman from Hell. I've got a special guest today, Mr. Anthony Dream Johnson, also known as the president of the Manosphere.
Yes,
Welcome.
sir.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, man.
So you probably heard me say this before, is that no matter how bad you think you got it in life, there's always somebody that's got it worse. And if you remember the video I did just in the past week, it was a guy that had been dating this girl for, I think they were together about 3 years. And he found out after he'd had a kid with her, had kind of mingled their family, she had a child from a previous relationship, he had 2 kids from another relationship, so they kind of merged their families together, if you will. And then basically he found out that she was a sugar baby and been selling nude pictures of herself since she was 17. She's now 25. And I guess had several men that were giving her money. Some of them she was sleeping with. And obviously, as you can imagine, the dude was pretty devastated. And he's been following my work for quite a few years. And so I kind of went through in the video and critiqued some of the things where along the way there were red flags. And he just kind of, because he really liked her and she was hot, he sent pictures, beautiful girl. And, the first time the average guy dates what he considers a unicorn or a smoke show, he thinks, I fucking hit the lottery.
Yep.
And it's like we make all our decisions based on our emotions and we use logic and reason to justify our purchase. And he just kind of, because, again, she was hot, best looking thing he'd ever been with, he gave her a lot of credit that she hadn't earned. So with that said, Mr. President here has got a, you thought that story was crazy. Wait till you hear what he's got to say. So,
okay. So like you mentioned, there's always someone out there who's had it worse. What's interesting about my story is that, I had this, a leadership position in the Manosphere for a long time. Before I met my ex-wife, and obviously since then, now, the presidency and stuff. So the fact that this happened to me, if just looking at on an observational basis, that was kind of fascinating in itself. That this would happen to someone like me in the middle of a lot of speakers like you, similar to you anyway, that have a lot of good messages for men that are legitimately controversial and strong and positive. So at a base level, for this to happen to someone like me was, a big surprise to a lot of people. A lot of fans, when I gave the speech, a lot of fans were initially confused because they didn't even know she wasn't at the conference. They thought she was interviewing somebody or something like that, because that's what she used to do for us for a couple of years. So just as a Manosphere community kind of thing, it was fascinating for it to happen.
Yeah, you're supposed to be immune. This is supposed to happen to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I was surrounded by guys who are legitimately, a lot of these speakers are not just coaches and, things like that, and other, speakers too, doctors and, FBI agents, Navy SEALs, a lot of cool people. But a lot of these guys are also just absolute slayers of women. A lot of these speakers have notch counts that are like 200, 300, 400 and stuff like that. So they have, whether you approve of that or not morally, these guys have real experience with women that is like not normal. The average guy in America has a notch count of like 7 or something like that over a lifetime, according to the CDC. Anyway, to kind of get back to the experience itself and the story of marrying the woman from hell, I gave a speech on this experience, and it's gone viral. It's got about 400,000 views, going in on 500,000 soon. And it's called Marrying Medusa, How to Survive a Female Psychopath. So the title alone is super, triggering, and the story is interesting, and there's a good hook at the beginning. And your fans can actually go watch this on YouTube. They can go type Marrying Medusa, and it should pull right up. And I think one of the reasons, too, that it went viral isn't just that, I was this figure running a conference and had a YouTube channel and all that dealt with a lot of these issues, dating and relationships and masculinity and all these things. It's also, like, I think, it's probably the most intense, like you mentioned, presentation on this experience ever happening to a man that was then presented in public. So without being a celebrity or something like that, I'm not like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, that kind of shit show going on right now. But as a young man that a lot of people could relate to, and this story, I gave the facts on what happened as best I could for 2 hours in a formal, TED Talk style presentation, and it was pretty bad. I mean, the stuff we'll get into, it was fucking, bizarre and gross and horrifying, even for a lot of guys who've been through something similar. Like, when I got off the stage, we had about, how many dozens of guys at the conference, like 60 or something like that year. It was the young men's convention we did, the under 21 convention. But a lot of the guys were immediately, some of them were almost in tears just hearing this stuff on like an empathy level, like, holy fucking shit, dude. Other guys could also relate to me. They actually would say that, you know, my experience wasn't quite as bad, but I could relate to you on like that point and that point and that experience and all that. So yeah, it was a nightmare. It's more complex than that though, because like a lot of it was a good time. I mean, this chick was, you know, super hot, had a really good time. The sex was crazy. So let me back up here for a second. You know, marrying Medusa, How to Survive a Female Psychopath. I went in a span of 10 days, almost 4 years ago exactly. It'll be February 21st was the day that I cut things off, so a couple days from now. I went from thinking that my wife was monogamous and loyal. We'd been married for 2 years and had dated for 2.5 before that. I thought she was monogamous and loyal. I found out she was cheating with one guy. I found this through pictures. Then I found out she had been cheating with a lot of guys the whole time. I got her to admit this. And then I found out she had been a prostitute for a long time. Not a prostitute, she wasn't like a streetwalker, like an escort. She actually called herself a high-end, I said, so basically you're a prostitute. And she goes, no, I was a high-end call girl. I'm like, so you're a prostitute. And she would get more and more angry as I was like, so you're a prostitute. Like, you have sex for money. Like, this is very, like, you seem confused on this issue. Anyway.
But it's not like that.
Yeah, exactly. So these days, you know, who knows what she's doing now, but these days you would see this more as like sugar dating, but really it was escorting is what she was doing. She did this before I met her. In other relationships, she did it when we were dating, and I found out she had been doing it when we were married. She didn't need the money. There was nothing, like, you know, we didn't have like some starving child in the street, you know, needed to be fucking fed and I was disabled or something. She was just doing this. Well, in the end of the day, I think she had, you know, for kicks and things like that and the excitement of it and the cash. I believe firmly that she had a cluster B personality disorder, which a lot of guys who go through these toxic relationships that have this super bizarre shit that happen, it's not like a regular relationship that kind of went south and there was like a bad breakup. These are like really bad breakups. These are like epic, you know. Like the guy you mentioned with just recently, you know, that you did the video on, it sounds like he was dating a single mom, he got married to her, he knocked her up.
Well, they didn't get married. I think they were living together or spending well, maybe they weren't. He didn't say, but you know, they had a kid together, obviously, and when he met her, she had just had a baby from some other guy who supposedly was a horrible boyfriend, a horrible human being.
Oh, cry me a
river. And he just kind of, you know, abandoned her, and she's going to raise the kid on her own without him because she's a strong, liberated, independent woman.
Yep.
And the reality, because he ended up, talking to the I guess one of the ex-boyfriends, he's like, yeah, she's doing the same shit to him.
Yep.
But the guy that she had the kid with has no idea that he's the father of her child, because I guess it was one of her Johns that, you know, she was hooking up with that got knocked up by. So there's a dude walking around that has a son that has no idea.
Yeah,
he's got a son.
So a lot of these chicks these guys that go through these really toxic relationships, they get roped up to this nightmare stuff, like I did. You know, waking up. I basically woke up one day to discover my wife was a prostitute. Like this was shocking. Like, this was not. I don't think her family knew this. Her family was very surprised, I think, to hear this. I think they had the brother, for example. I think he knew that she was kind of like super promiscuous, but I don't think they knew she was a hooker. Like this was a big shock to her family and stuff. Like, holy shit, and to me as well, and my friends and stuff. But when a lot of these guys get roped into these relationships, whether it was mine or that guy, and you know, a lot of your fans will have been through experiences like this. These women are not just bad women that act out; they have personality disorders. They have maybe they inherited it through genetics. Maybe they had a really tough childhood, sexual abuse, things like that, that led to trauma that went unresolved and then eventually dominated how they think, act, and behave. So, like, my ex-wife had a wedding ring on and thought it was okay to go out and suck dick for cash. And like most wives with a wedding ring on this is not normal. Like, this isn't just regular cheating, this is cheating for cash.
She had bills to pay, man.
Yeah, I know, right? People said I should have kept her and like pimped her out basically, and I was like, man, I'm not down with that. But good thinking, right? Good, you know, be a hustler. But yeah, I mean, this is disordered behavior. This is malignant behavior that destroys relationships, it destroys lives. Fortunately, we didn't have any kids together, and I also protected myself legally. I never got legally married to her. I'm firmly opposed to any kind of legal marriage in the West today. I think the government, I support the position of like Senator Rand Paul and former Congressman Ron Paul. The marriage should be a private ceremony, a private religious kind of institution, and the government should have very limited involvement in it. Maybe, for example, if you have a contract or a civil union kind of thing going on, that's it. And the way we do marriage today with government heavily involved, I think it's a bunch of nonsense. And as a result, men get screwed over in divorce court and family court every day. And I didn't want to go through that. As being a part of the Manosphere and running the conference, I knew enough from the pickup artists and the men's rights guys. I was like, something's really off with marriage today in the West, and I'm not okay with that. I didn't want to get involved with that, regardless of the chick. I thought she was, of course, amazing. I thought she was this unicorn, loved my life, all that. A lot of that, though, was fake. That was her playing to my values, playing to what I wanted, well beyond the level that would be considered healthy. A woman maybe adopting what a man wants and responding to that. Everything that people, not just women, but
she
men
just
and women.
basically told you what you wanted to hear, and you were already predisposed to believe it.
Yeah, she told me I wanted to hear at a really extreme level. Just like her behavior wasn't just promiscuous, it was criminal. This is like deliberately, prostitution in Florida is not legal. This is in Nevada. So the behavior that people with personality disorders do tends to be really exaggerated, almost cartoonish. And that's what she did. The rampant lying, the rampant cheating, the prostitution, like all this stuff. It's very abusive behavior at a really bizarre level, just like what that guy went through. She wasn't just kind of like lying a little bit about this. She had a whole life hidden behind, like my ex-wife. This was a whole double life. So much so that when we split up, or when I found this out, I thought she had a split personality disorder or multiple personalities or something like that. Because it was so uncharacteristic of as she presented herself, that persona. I was like, this is just nuts. Like, you have to be fucking crazy to be married and go suck dick for cash. Like, why? Like, who does this? Like, it's really rare that happens. So yeah, it was a whole shit show, and I gave a speech on it. And it's been 4 years now. I've been single ever since, and I tend to keep it that way for a little while longer. I do look forward to getting into a relationship in the future at some point. One where the chick is not a crazy cluster B clusterfuck, as we call it. Cluster B being the spectrum of personality disorders that are considered dramatic by the APA, the American Psychological Association.
Whose idea was it to become exclusive initially? Who brought that up?
She did, I think, yeah.
After how long of dating?
About a month.
About a month?
Yeah.
When was like the first red flag that you were like, something's not right there?
Let's get into that. So there were plenty of red flags that, well, there were some things about her that were positive, like genuinely, and I consider them kind of green flags. For example, she didn't have a ton of shoes, which most chicks like have all these, they have fucking like 50 pairs of shoes. It's nuts to me. She didn't. She had like 10 or something. I was like, that's reasonable. Like that's interesting. Most girls are like not like that. She had a house and it was put together. It was clean, and that was not just the beginning. That was consistent for years, and it wasn't like some weird.
She was older too, right?
She was older than me. Yeah, that was a big mistake.
How many years older was she?
7.
7 years.
Yeah. She looked young though. She looked. A lot of people thought I was older than she was. Growing up in Florida, I've always out in the sun and stuff, so I've looked like a lot older than I am for years. That seems to be leveling out now at 30, 31. But yeah, there were plenty of red flags like that. I moved in with her really fast. A few months after we started dating, my lease ended on my place, and it was convenient. It's how a lot of guys get roped into that stuff. So moved in too fast, which is a big red flag that she would even want that. Moving too fast, all that stuff. And women with personality disorders tend to push that stuff too. Like we mentioned earlier too, women are good at seeing through your bullshit and finding chinks in your armor. Mm-hmm. Women with personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, all that, they're like that to the max. Like they will not only find weak links you have and rip them open, they'll generate more if they can. They'll find insecurities and magnify them and amplify them. So they're very destructive. And
so it keeps you guessing and doubting yourself.
They want you to.
Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I was a little bit of a jerk, and maybe I should apologize. And
they want to distort your sense of reality between right and wrong, and what's true and what's false. They'll gaslight the hell out of you, through the roof. So it's a lot of very negative, destructive behavior, and it's their own unresolved trauma mixing with some of yours, but they're like the active initiators of this stuff, and they're predatory. And like one of the things I mentioned in the speech that people found pretty interesting is most guys look at the sexual marketplace, they look at a girl, and they want to, this is super common in the manosphere and beyond that, they rank a girl, right, 1 to 10. She's a 10, she's a supermodel, she's super hot, she's exactly what they want, across maybe a variety of factors, physicality, personality, whatever, right? Boobs, butt, looks, age, whatever the case is. Down to 1, they're, overweight, ugly, hideous, all that stuff. I think it's actually a mistake, and I think that women with personality disorders actually represent negative value to your life. So if you look at it like a diagram, you have like 10, 0 if they're like, hideous. Then you have a negative 10 spectrum. And I think that these women, that
It goes into the energy vampires.
They're vampires, exactly. They're vampires. I call them sharks, like sharks swimming in the depths of the ocean, if you look at it like an ocean. But they really are predatory and they're dangerous to your life, much more so than a normal woman even could be. Even considering things like false rape allegations, false domestic violence allegations, women like this are, and men like this too, right? These people exist, vipers, as we call them. They're dangerous. The possibility for cheating is way higher, relationship abuse, emotional abuse, false allegations. I was worried about that when I split up with her. In Florida, for example, there's like a 2-year statute on some of these false allegations. So for the first 2 years, I was like, holy shit. Is she going to falsely accuse me of whatever because she's pissed about the video? She is aware of the video, of course, and she wants it taken down, which I'm like, nope. So that's that. But yeah, I think women with personality disorders, I mean, they're a chunk of the population, just like men. They say up to 15% of people have cluster B personality disorders, and it's not always obvious, Some of these chicks will have a bunch of tattoos, and they have very obvious daddy issues, and they're kind of unhinged. Those are like lower functioning versions of this, but not all women are like that. Some of them have these disorders, and they're higher functioning. They're able to navigate like my ex-wife, for whatever reason, smart, clever, motivated, whatever the case is. They'll navigate the situations.
Tattoos?
0 tattoos.
0 tattoos.
0. That's what I'm saying. Like
Interesting.
Dudes,
I've personally found the more tattoos a girl has, the higher they are in the crazy scale.
In a way that you can see. That's the problem with some of this. So she had 0 tattoos before I knew her, with her, and beyond.
This has come from a guy that's had several girlfriends that had tattoos.
Yeah. She had no.
So it's not that I don't like women without tattoos. It's just you tend to get a higher. When I compare them versus women I've dated that had none, the women had none and had good relationships with their dads were pretty level-headed. The ones that had tattoos, father was missing, or they had several fathers.
So I kind of like girls that have tattoos because none of these things you're saying are true. The issue is they're showing you their trauma. They're physically expressing it on their body by, marking up an organ, their skin. And that has problems with it, like you're saying, and I agree with you. The issue is when if they have those problems and they don't express them in a way that you see, they hide them. And those are the ones that are the most dangerous. They're covert narcissists. They're not overt. People claim Trump's a narcissist and all that. I disagree with that. But at minimum, he's expressing it openly and outwardly, and it's obvious. He is who he is. Makes fun of people, whatever all the stuff he does.
Yeah, he doesn't take shit from anybody. If you hit him, he's going to hit you back twice as hard. That's just his philosophy.
Right. That's right.
I've even shared that quote of his on my my Instagram.
Punch back 10 times harder.
Yep.
Yeah. The issue is that narcissism is not. I don't think he's disorder. I don't think he has a personality disorder, but the way he expresses narcissism on purpose, for strategy, or whatever he's doing in his life, whatever goal he has, business or presidency or whatever, he's expressing it openly and outwardly. It's overt. It's the covert narcissists, male or female, they're a lot more dangerous because they can worm their way into your life and into your head and into your value system and whatever trauma, weaknesses you have, and they can just, fester these problems in you, which can be good for you long term if you survive. But as you probably know, guys kill themselves a lot of the time, at least compared to women. They kill themselves at 500% the rate that women do.
I've got a shit ton of emails over the years from guys who've told me that my book, my work was what kept them from offing themselves because they hear stories like this and they're like, oh fuck, it wasn't me, I wasn't the problem. I just made a bad choice. Yeah. And then you give them the skills that they need to make a good choice and find a good woman in the future, have a good relationship. It completely changes the paradigm.
I'll be straight with you, man. The first time I had any serious thought of suicide in my life was walking around my neighborhood as I was packing up my shit, moving out, from a Medusa. And I was like, wow, I fucking married a hooker. And I was, this is an accident. This was not on purpose. And that was emotionally very traumatic for me. It was the first time in my life I had very serious emotional trauma from a relationship like that. Everything before that was, peanuts compared to that. That was devastating. This is a woman that, I lived with for, over 4 years, was married to, loved her. She was my wife. And she was out fucking sucking dick for cash and whatnot on the side the whole time. Not all the time. This wasn't like weekly activity, I think. But it was consistent every few months or something when she needed to get some extra cash or for the excitement or whatever the fuck the reason was. The validation,
just choke a couple chickens here and there and make some quick cash.
It's ironic you bring that up for reasons I'll tell you when we get done filming that I can't say on camera. But yeah, choke some chickens. Yeah. Yep. But like you mentioned too, though, so there were some things that were not, she had no weird piercing. She had one, she used to have one on her belly button, but she got rid of it. And she had a piercing, just like on her earlobes, and that's it. So she wasn't covered head to toe in tattoos. There wasn't anything weird like that. She was not overweight. She was put together. She stayed fit the whole time we were together. Super trad wife, too. So that was one of the things, too. She knew I wanted that kind of traditional life. So she played up to that to the max. And a lot of guys don't know this because I didn't mention that in the speech when I gave this at the time. This is, 4 years ago now about. But, dude, she cooked and cleaned and, stomach full, balls empty. Like, to the max. We fucked every day for, 4.5 years. And she would cook and clean, cook this extravagant stuff. So in some ways, it was a nightmare. In other ways, I had a fucking great time.
So she was able to completely compartmentalize her life.
Oh, yeah. Dude, really, yeah, that's I should have mentioned in the speech, that's one of the reasons it was so fucking bizarre. Yeah, she compartmentalized. I mean, I think she would literally go fuck guys, fuck a client in Naples, Florida. We used to live down in Southwest Florida. And then on the way home, she was good at covering her tracks. She had reasons to go out and do these things, right, to cover, so I wouldn't get suspicious. So she'd go to Whole Foods after it, and she'd drop $300-400 at Whole Foods, almost exclusively on stuff for me, organic, gluten-free, grass-fed, the most expensive shit you can imagine. And so she'd
showering you with praise and gifts
for years, man. That's what kept the illusion going. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
So when she really fucked up, she would spend a lot of money on you?
Yeah. Well, I think she would. I don't know if she felt guilty or not. Maybe she didn't, but yeah, she would make all this cash and then she would just blow it on me, 80% of it. So I kind of got paid. She would fuck for cash and then she would pay me with gifts and shit from it. So yeah, at the end of the day too, I lost no money with my divorce, so to speak, the separation, and I made out pretty cash positive for years with this chick because she just kept making money and blowing it on me left and right. Whatever the motivations behind that were, I mean, probably several. It wasn't probably singular. But yeah, it was a really wild experience. And it's been a cornerstone of moving. Well, it's a period of my life that I'll never forget. I mean, how many times are you gonna marry a hooker in Vegas? We got married in Vegas too, by the way. That was my idea. We didn't meet in Vegas. We met in Florida. We lived in Florida, but I wanted to get out of Florida, so I picked Vegas. But at the end of the day, I didn't know she was a hooker, so it's I married a hooker in Vegas. What else is new?
So what other kinds of red flags did you see along the way? Were there things you saw in the beginning that you were like, something's not right about that, but then you just dismissed it?
Well, one of them, for example, I didn't know. So there's a couple I didn't know how to interpret. So, for example, when she didn't have tattoos, I didn't understand why she didn't have tattoos. Which, at the end of the day, I think it's because she has NPD. She has a narcissistic personality disorder. So she's obsessed with her appearance to a ridiculously and unhealthy degree. So tattoos interfere with that. That's the reason she didn't get tattoos, not because she didn't have trauma. She hid the trauma and expressed it in other ways, so cheating, prostitution, and stuff like that. So the tattoos are not as important as why someone has them or doesn't have them, which is what I realize now. So that's advice people need to hear, but it's not as easy to understand and apply in real life. It means you're responsible for applying it, and it's complicated sometimes. This is a really good example of that. I know chicks who are way less crazy than my ex-wife who have a bunch of tattoos. They just kind of own it. It's just who they are. Mm-hmm. They get marked up because they were traumatized or whatever. Another one, though, is that her dad, I asked her early on, because one of our speakers talked about this, and I liked it. He was like, always ask a woman what her relationship is like with her father. So early on, first or second date, I asked her, I was like, what's your relationship like with your dad? And she pops back, oh, he died a long time ago, years ago, which was true. And I had never had a girl that I wanted to bang before, and all that. I wanted to date. I never had one say that to me. It was, dad was always alive, because I was young. I was 22 when I met her. I was about to be 23. So that kind of I was like, oh shit. I feel like I stepped in a landmine. And so factually, that was true. Her dad had died years before, I met her, 10 years or something like that. But I didn't know how to handle that. And it wasn't until, I don't know, probably a year or two later that we got more into the issues she had with her father and what that was like. So I asked a good question early on that men should ask generally. But I was so young and inexperienced with that specific kind of question, probing, I didn't know how to handle it. And of course, not having a father is a very deep wound in someone like that. She wasn't, that old. She was 30 at the time. But yeah, not having a father, it's going to leave.
She never talked about the relationship she had with him?
Well, she had played it like she didn't want to get into it because it was so painful, which is partly true. It's just later on I found out how dysfunctional it was and stuff like that. And by that point, we had already been together for probably a year at that point.
Yeah, that's one of the big things, man. It's women who love their dads, they're proud of them, they talk about them.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
if you got a woman that's evasive,
Yes.
you know, you got to pay attention.
So basically, the death was the tool to be evasive about it, and legitimately, that's a sensitive issue if your parent is fucking dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just popping off asking kind of randomly about that. So, yeah, that was a red flag I missed, and frankly, I didn't understand how to navigate it at that point when a girl's father had died. At this point, if a girl's father's dead, that's unfortunate, but it's almost a red flag in itself, regardless.
Yeah, if he dies when she's 30, but she doesn't want to talk about it, and
Yeah.
she's, 37 at the time? Or
No,
old
she was 30.
She was
Yeah.
30 at the time?
Yeah.
And he died when? How old was she when he supposedly...
She was probably like 22, 23. So it had been, many years. Not a super long time, but a good chunk of time. Yeah. Other red flags we get into.
Yeah,
Well,
because
she
girls
was
have good relationships with their dads. They've got, if they're on social media, they got pictures of their dads there.
Yeah.
They talk about their dads glowingly. They fucking love the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Because they look up to them and they admire them. But
That's right.
if it's just a black hole
Yeah.
and you can't get any information...
Well, the relationship with the father is going to reflect how they view men. I mean, this is like the longest running male relationship they've had in their life. So without that, because he died or because it was abusive or whatever, it's a bad thing.
And there was no uncles or grandfathers that she was close to or anything like that?
I actually met her grandfather or great grandfather. Yeah, she did. She was. I met her grandfather at one point up in Michigan. She was close with him, but it wasn't like a father relationship. It wasn't like a substitute.
In other words, when she got into a jam or needed advice, she's not going to pick up the phone and call him.
Correct. Yeah, she was close with her grandma a lot too, but her grandma had died probably 2-3 years before I met her. So that was the whole thing too. But some other red flags. She was a nurse, an RN, registered nurse, which honestly is kind of a red flag. Like every nurse, I've banged like a bunch of nurses since then, and they all tend to be a little kind of weird, kind of screwy. So I didn't understand that at the time. Hairstylist, nurse. She was also a massage therapist at the Ritz, at a 5-star
I'm
hotel.
going to be getting lots of shit comments from nurses going, "Fuck you, nurses."
No, not of course.
Doesn't mean all of them.
Yeah,
Some
of course not. Of course not. But generally, they tend to be like. Look, I'm gonna tell you right now. Almost every nurse I've banged has fake tits, and I'm a big fan. I think fake tits are wonderful. The issue is, it's like, why do you have them outside of a relationship? Medusa did not have fake tits when I met her, but she was a nurse, and eventually in the relationship, she did get fake tits, which I was like, fuck yeah, it's fucking great. She even paid for them. I didn't pay for them, so that was great. Anyway, though, the nurse thing is a problem, to be honest.
Actually, she didn't pay for him.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, dude, there's actually so she was missing. I don't know, $500-600 for the surgery, right? And she asked me to loan her like $500-600. This was back in 2013 or something like that. And we had the convention coming up. I was like, hey, look, I can't do that right now. I have a lot of expenses going on, a lot of shit. Like, just ask your sister or your brother or something. It'll be fine. I just kind of brushed it off like nothing. And she kept pushing. And I was like, no, like I'm not doing it. Like I got shit going on. Just ask your sister or your brother. You'll find somebody. It'll be easy. They're older than her even, right? They were like late 30s and 40s. I was like, it'd be easy. It's $500, right? She was going to stay with her sister in California for the thing. She did. So I just assumed that she would do that. I found out later, I found the fucking text conversation. She actually went to LA where she got the surgery, and she fucked a guy the night before the surgery for the $500. I have the fucking text conversation. I have the address, like all the fucking shit. And I was just like, I found this like years later, but I'm like, holy shit. Even the specific $500, she went and fucked. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. That's how specific some of the evidence I found was too. And that's part of what made the speech compelling. It wasn't just me claiming this. I had a written confession from her on some of this stuff. I had evidence I'd found through text messages, phone numbers, all kinds of shit. So it was a fucking shit show. So we were talking about, the red flags and stuff. There was numerous little ones like that. And then those were mixed in with some kind of green flags. Like, she didn't have a crazy amount of shoes, which honestly is pretty rare. She had 0 tattoos. I thought that was pretty good. And at face value, those kind of things are good. At the end of the day, I did not have the experience with women or in life to navigate some of the more complex ones she was hiding things or compensating for things too. An example would be the elaborate dinners and grocery shopping she would do after she fucked somebody like that for cash. It did not occur to me that
So those are like little intermittent extravagances that
Yeah.
would happen, and that would typically, now looking back on it, you can say that's
Yeah.
probably after she just
Yeah.
fucked somebody else because she felt guilty about it.
Exactly. Yep.
So she's trying to make up for it.
And it's a way to compensate for that, yeah, exactly, and a way to express it. And then she, fucking blow me and all this stuff and whatever. But yeah, it was a bizarre experience, man, super bizarre. But I learned a lot from it. Like, I'm glad it happened. I didn't get any STDs from it, thank God. When I figured out she was a prostitute, I immediately went to get checked, and I was like, I remember when they called me, I was actually started crying. Like a week later, I got the results, and I had 0 STDs. And I thought I had something. I'm like, there's no fucking way.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dude, I didn't know if I had fucking HIV, fucking herpes. Fuck no, I had nothing at the end of the day. But I figured I had something, and I didn't. And I was like,
you thought you were going to be Charlie Sheen, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know. I was like, dude, I mean, this hit me so fast, like a ton of bricks. It was just wild. But at the end of the day, I learned a lot about women, a lot about myself. It was a pivotal experience in my life. And the speech, I think, is an expression of that. I think that's why it's part of the reason it's gone viral. You talked about it was something very relational for men, too, to learn from. And it was very raw. I cursed a lot in the video, probably a little too much, but it's an expression of the passion, the intensity of what I went through.
Lots of cursing happens on my channel, so.
Yeah. I tend to be
to my monetization detriment, but
I take all challengers for dropping F-bombs, and I tend to win. I have a few close, like Hunter Drew, a buddy of mine, one of our speakers. We both drop like a bunch of F-bombs when we speak. But yeah, it was a wild experience, and I'm glad it happened. I'm glad I made the mistakes I did with her, with the red flags, for example, because ultimately that relationship was long-term useless. Like, I should have never been there in the first place, at minimum due to the age difference.
Well, quite frankly, in your line of work, I mean, the way I look at things is what happened, and it couldn't have happened any other way.
That's right.
It had to happen.
Yeah.
For you to, because that makes you a better speaker, a better coach, a better teacher.
Well,
Because now you got something that some kid might be 16, 18, 19 years old, and they hear it, and then 5 years from now, they start dating a girl, and those little things are happening. They're like, yeah, remember when President Johnson experienced that?
Well, I knew, for example, the speakers at our convention for years that talked about, energy vampires and women who were, toxic for you, not good for you. And I would hear that, and I didn't really understand it. And looking back on it, I can see why I didn't understand it, because I'd never experienced it at a very visceral, in-your-face level. I had banged girls, all these girls in college and stuff, but they were like, the worst ones were just kind of like, wild party chicks. They were kind of like unhinged and shit, with tattoos and whatnot, which comparatively is not that bad, versus a professional hooker who's good at manipulating men, getting money from them, and, doing all this toxic shit. So I had to learn the hard way that there are dangerous women out there. There are dangerous people in general. But when you put your dick in a woman that you like and you want to have sex with and make a family with or whatever, literally reproduce with, that makes you compromised. And it puts you in a very vulnerable position.
Because now you're attached to an outcome.
That's right, yeah. I mean, we literally got married. We had a wedding anyway. I mentioned the private marriage. We never got legally married, but we did have a wedding. We had both families come out. We had a honeymoon in Hawaii for a week. We traded rings, vows, and she took my last name. So she went to the courthouse, spent, $400 or $500, had a new passport, social security card, driver's license, all that shit, took my last name. So we had all the mechanics of a marriage minus the legal entanglements that I refused to get in. She pushed for that, and I was like, it's not happening, get the fuck out of here. And I got pushed back from my family, too, and her family on that, and I was like, I don't care. Like, take it or leave it.
Good for you for standing your ground, man.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, a few people
That's masculinity there. It's like, nope.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to compromise, even if it means you leave. A good friend of mine, he was, this is back when we were in our 20s, and he was engaged, and his then fiance was giving him shit about something, and he didn't like I don't remember what she said, but she was kind of, I think, in a way threatening about something, and he was just like, well, give me my ring back.
Nice.
And she was taken aback, and she started crying, and he was going to do what he wanted. He was a good guy, and he's still with her to this day, almost fucking 30 years later.
Wow.
So he's one of the few guys I listen to when we talk about dating.
Well, him putting his foot down is probably part of the reason that relationship has stood for so long.
Yeah.
Having the boundaries and the enforcement of those boundaries too.
He's gotten softer a little bit, which happens there because women don't stop. They're always going to test you. Always going to test your strength.
Testosterone declines over time too.
That too, but they're like the fucking Borg. You will be assimilated, man. Resistance is futile.
Well,
they're not going to stop. It's just they're driven that way. They're feminine energy is driven to test masculine strength.
That's right.
You act like a bitch, you're going to get treated like one.
That's right.
And that's harsh reality, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry, I didn't make women this way. If you don't like it, talk to the big man
now
upstairs.
Now we're going to make women great again.
Yeah. Now we're going to make women great again
man.
At the convention. So, at what point tell me about how it all unraveled? Where your perfect world just tell me this.
I mean, things at the end were pretty rocky anyway. But we still had our wedding anniversary, and it was February 2nd. We got married on Super Bowl Sunday, actually, that year in 2014 it was. But things were not... It didn't look like I was going to wake up in a few weeks like I did and find out she was a fucking cheating hooker.
So you were already not getting along before it blew up?
At the end, yeah.
So in other words, the honeymoon period was definitely over,
Yes.
and you were starting to see her
Yes.
for what she really was.
It was starting to come through. I think the mask... This happens in toxic relationships with legitimate covert narcissists. They can only keep the mask on for so long. Now, that depends on their motivation and other factors, like how competent are they, how smart are they. In her case, I think she was highly motivated for whatever reason, from pain, trauma, whatever, right? Like one of my friends said, her marriage to me was a scream for normalcy. She had been not normal for so long, had been a prostitute for so long, had lived this kind of double life that she wanted to get away from it. And she saw me as a pathway or tool for doing that, along with whatever other motivations and fucked up shit she had going on. But yeah, so eventually the mask slips. Whether that's 6 months in, 2 years in, or in my case, a little bit over 4 years in, things starting to unravel.
How? What did that look like? What specifically happened?
Oh man, that's a whole fucking.
Was
shit
it
show.
fighting? Were you not getting along? Was she being bitchy to you? Like,
I don't even know where to begin. There's some of the stuff I can't share on camera because I don't have evidence for it, so I don't want to get like defamation stuff.
yeah, but layman's terms, give us like a Cliff Notes version.
She did some things
because
that
the people watch this are going to want to know, how do I spot a girl like this? That's really going to be the takeaway. What obviously the red flags are: you got too serious, too fast.
Yes. Yeah.
You
which is bad in general, but it's especially bad when a woman is pushing like full speed, no brakes for that stuff. That's a symptom of personality disorder. It's not a girl that likes you too much and is kind of digging into it like too much. It's that there's an agenda behind it. It's fake basically. Yeah. So you want to keep going into it though?
Yeah. Well, the red flags. So overall, what are the red flags you missed that So the 18, 20, the 22-year-old guy that's watching this. He doesn't know it yet, but maybe next week or in a couple weeks he's going to meet a similar girl. It's like, what's he got to be on the lookout for?
Number one, if it this is a very old school saying, but it's true. And if it's too good, if it sounds or looks too good to be true, it probably is. So in this case, her being older was a problem in itself, but her being just this girl who happened to be single and all this stuff, who was hot and was really into me, it was just too much, too fast. Especially with the values and the way she was playing to what telling me what I wanted to hear. Not just telling me, but acting to what I wanted to hear too. I even had a friend early on when one of my best friends met her. We did a camping trip together. I did a camping trip every year with my friends. We had anywhere from 10 to 20 of us went out. And he actually said to me, and this is very common for these kind of relationships with people who have a personality disorder, he said, dude, she's like a male version of you. And he meant that sincerely, and he meant it, I think, as a compliment at the time. The problem is she was not a male version of me. And I don't think you should want that anyway. Men and women are different, and you don't need a fucking, a female version of yourself with tits. I don't think that's a healthy relationship to have. It's okay to be different from your partner or from your your girlfriend or whatever. But anyway, she was... You
gotta have similar goals or values, or you can be clashing all the time.
You should, yeah. But there's room for differences too, and they can be substantial. You don't have to have like all the same hobbies, for example, and shit like that.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend that was a socialist, and I just
we
butted heads on just so many things that we saw the world completely opposite in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no,
it's like trying to have that discussion is like it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. I don't have the patience for that. Maybe I'm a dick for that, but I don't care.
Well, my friend making that comment, though, that to me, this is actually studied and talked about in books and things like that discuss these kind of toxic relationships. It's a really early sign that your friends will notice. The partner, whether you're male or female, whatever the girl is...
So in other words, the red flag is she's putting on an act. In other words, she's so much like you, she's too much like you, and that should be concerning.
Yes, it should be concerning, especially if your friends are noticing it. Not just you, because you're in the middle of it and you're the target. I mean, this is literally predatory behavior. You're the target, and you're emotionally compromised because you're physically compromised. Mm-hmm. Your pair bonding, the hormones, the orgasms, all that stuff. So yeah, if she's too much like you and your friends are noticing it, that's a big red flag. Even if they don't see it as a bad thing, you should. She should be different from you. She shouldn't be the exact same. I don't think she should be a socialist if you're a MAGA Trump supporter or whatever.
Yeah, that goes over like a lead balloon with the socialists.
Yeah.
If you're MAGA, swipe left.
Yeah. Honestly, I know some of your fans might not like it, the girls, but, massage therapists tend to be really, odd. They tend to have a lot of weird beliefs. And she even told me this. Like, all her friends, she's like, yeah, they're all, like, nuts. Well, they are. Like, I've met other massage therapists, and they tend to be, like, into really weird stuff. Hey, it's a free country, do your thing, but it's like the hairstylist, right? Hairstylist girls are always, like, kind of wild. Good for a night, maybe not good for, a relationship or building a family. Nurses, again,
not
too.
in all cases, though, so don't be getting
Not in all,
butthurt.
of course not. But a lot of them. Same way you don't, and this is another level, but you don't intentionally date strippers. Like, they're notorious for having unlimited problems. Any guy I ever know who's been banging strippers or knows them or worked at a nightclub, they will tell you, female strippers have unlimited fucking problems. So you don't date them. Like, if you want to bang one, I mean, all right, take your swing, man, go for it. But you don't want to build a family with one usually, unless you're just crazy as shit. But she was, both a nurse and, a massage therapist, which is like a double whammy of crazy. So, take the profession seriously. If she's working somewhere and doing something, like, what is she doing? Particularly if she's using her body. Now, in her case, she wasn't, but I would say in general, if a woman is using her body and her physicality to get money in her job, that's a bad thing. Even something like a bartender. If she's a bartender, if some girl you're into is a bartender at a bar, and she's constantly wearing push-up bras to get more tips, it's been normalized for her to use sexuality to get money, to make it, like, super transactional. Not like a relationship where you're trading values, but she's literally trading sexuality for cash. And that's not prostitution, but that's not healthy. It's not healthy, at least for someone you want to build a relationship with, in my opinion. Well, let me say this, it's something to watch out for. It's like tattoos, right? Yep. Maybe not the end of the world. Maybe, some bartenders are worth dating. A lot of them, I think, are not. Because they're constantly trading, the woman anyway, sex for money or sexuality for money. You don't want that in your life, unless you just want to go that angle and go to town.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there, done that, and wouldn't recommend it.
So those last few months you guys were together, you said it was
Yeah.
already. Were you just not getting along? What was different? What had changed?
Yeah, I mean, she tried shutting the. She tried this early on, and she tried it again later. She tried, so for example, 6 months after we got married, she tried shutting the sex off to whenever she wanted. Whereas up to that point, this had been 2.5, 3 years at this point. We had sex every day, whenever I wanted, which was every day. I'm just, I'm young, super horny like that, right? High libido. And she just had this little hissy fit, and, she didn't want to fuck like that anymore. I was like, hey, I didn't, and early on, I told her this to her face. I even say this in the speech. I was like, hey, like, I didn't sign up for that. I love you, but I'm not okay with that. We've been having sex every day, pretty much, for, years, and we're going to keep doing that, or I'm going to leave tomorrow, like in 24 hours. I'm going to end this whole thing, and we're fucking done. I did not sign up for that. She, of course, was huge hissy fit and screaming and shit, and I'm like, whoa. But, of course, we ended up keep fucking for years after that, or whatever, a year and a half or something. She tried this again at the end. It was kind of a repeat of the 6-month thing. Because a lot of this is planned, right? It's all fake. It's her playing to what I want to hear, doing what I want. It's not real, and it's not genuine passion.
So do you feel that she was never in love with you, never really cared? It was all an act on her part?
That's a good question. That's something I've thought a lot about. I think early on it was a lot more genuine. Just the newness of it and stuff like that. I think that could be bullshit too, though. It's hard to say.
It's a good book you should read, 3% Man.
Yeah? Yeah, interesting, yeah. I ordered my copy today, actually. Yeah, get your book now, understandingrelationships.com.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
you can definitely you can read 3% Man and Mastering Yourself, my second book, at understandingrelationships.com. All you got to do is subscribe to the email newsletter.
So it is a really good question. Part of it, why it's complicated to answer, is I don't know if she's even capable of loving someone genuinely and in a meaningful way, in an adult, mature way. I really don't know. And that's not just unique to her, that's specific to anyone with a personality disorder that makes relationships basically impossible. Like, one of the key characteristics of women with borderline personality disorder is abandonment issues, usually from a dad. So we call these daddy issues in everyday language, but really it's abandonment issues. And basically, they're so dysfunctional in their personality and their psychology, they make it impossible to be in a long-term relationship with them. They engage in behaviors that make it impossible to stay with them. So in her case, for example, I told her early on, I have 0 tolerance for violence, domestic violence, and 0 tolerance for cheating. You ever hit me, you ever cheat on me, I'm gone immediately, which in the end is what I had to do. She acted, and now she cheated on every boyfriend she ever had, as far as I know. That's what she told me. Like, you mentioned that in earlier, too, with some of the other stuff. She told me flat out. I was like, whoa. And, of course, that was never disclosed, because that would have made me watch out for it.
Yeah, you found that out at the end?
I found that out at the end. So she hid a lot of stuff too. Like you mentioned, some of the red flags. She put, to her credit, she put in the effort to hide a lot of this as best she could. And then on top of that, there was some what appeared to be genuine green flags, like the no tattoos. So a lot of this was convincing, especially when I was young and didn't know better. Don't know where I was going with that, but somewhere interesting.
We were talking about red flags, things to look for.
Yeah.
How things spiraled out of control.
Yeah, at the end. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like we were about to get divorced any day, but things were not as good at the end. I think the mask was slipping. She was getting tired of the act for whatever reason. It had served whatever purposes she wanted. Like, for example, one of the speakers, the guy who married us, actually, I had a speaker be the officiator, basically, in Vegas. He said later on that he thought a lot of the marriage to me, or the wedding specifically too, was to, like, get back at her mom. Like, her mom was there, obviously. And there was some animosity that we didn't know a lot about between her and the mom. So marrying me was kind of like, haha, I can do it, and like, fuck you kind of thing, like a revenge kind of thing. And I was just a pawn for that. Oh, you mentioned the love thing. Yeah, so they act in ways that make it impossible to date them long term. And in my case, like I mentioned, I had zero tolerance explicitly for violence, any kind of DV, and any kind of cheating. Zero. What I didn't understand, for example, in telling her that it's good to have clear boundaries like that, it's good to put your foot down and make that clear off the bat. In her case, that was just information. That was like intel. Like, oh, now I know what I have to hide. Don't ever let him know because there'll be no forgiveness, and there wasn't. The minute I found out she was cheating, I took the ring off in like 10, 15 minutes. And within an hour, I had announced to my family and friends that we're done. That's it. Leaving as soon as I can. And I did leave in real life probably 4 or 5 days later. I had to pack up all my shit, move to Orlando.
Where were you living at the time?
Lehigh Acres, Fort Myers, almost technically.
Fort Misery, yeah.
Fort Misery, yeah.
See, there's another mistake.
That's where I'm from, yeah. That's my hometown. Green Wave.
A friend of mine is from Fort Myers I went to high school with, and he used to always call it Fort Misery. But that was 30 years ago. It's obviously changed a lot since then.
It's probably not any better. I'm actually from Cape Coral, Cape Coma, home of the nearly dead, newlywed. But I went to high school in Fort Myers, so I know the area pretty well. Yeah, we were living in Lehigh Acres, it was right on the border of Fort Myers, like right nearby. Yeah. But I wanted to get away from her. I was like, this is, first of all, I'm holding true to my values, what I fucking said, which is zero DV. She never hit me, so that's fine. And vice versa, obviously. And zero cheating. I never cheated on her.
So how did you find out that all this? Did you see her phone? Like, what was the magic? What was Pandora's box?
It was basically, I had like the sneaking suspicion without really too much to go on. I just kind of had like a gut feeling. I was like, something, for a few months it had been not right, but something didn't feel right, like, in that, this was like in January 2016. I was like, I wonder if she's fucking cheating and just lying about it, right? So, living together, she had a desktop computer that she would do her work off of, and I went and looked around, just kind of snooping, which is rude or whatever, but given that we were together, it felt appropriate given the gut feeling that I had. So I did, and I found nothing. And I was like, fuck, like, am I just being a fucking asshole? Like, this is my wife, like, why don't I trust her? Like, this is being stupid. So I let it go for about 2 weeks, and I was like, all right, I'm just being ridiculous, I'm being paranoid, kind of a lot of the shit they would tell men today, right? To feel this stuff, like, from a feminist perspective, like, toxic masculinity. Well, you gotta be so controlling, right? But I was, like, even 2 weeks
Always
later.
Trust your gut.
Yeah. So about 2 weeks later, I'm like, man, something ain't right, like, something feels off. And, like, my gut kept saying, like, there's something on this fucking computer that's going to fucking tell me something I don't want to hear and I don't want to see. So I looked again. And this time I found I had run into a different folder I didn't see before. And it wasn't like pornographic or anything, but I had found pictures of her with this guy. And it was obvious to me right off the bat that they were, like, fucking or whatever. They had been kissing in one, just kind of, like, intimate, pictures like that. And these look pretty recent. These look like they were from a few months ago or something. So, I found this stuff and I was fucking furious. I'm like, oh, she's fucking cheating. We're fucking done. Holy fuck. So that was a little clusterfuck. So I called my best friend over, my best man at the wedding, and he came over. And she was out at a movie with a friend that night. I think legitimately some chick that I think I'd actually met her a couple times. So she came back home, and as she walks in, I have the pictures pulled up on her desktop, and I'm just sitting there in this chair. And I'm like, so how many times you fucked this guy? Just like, my friend is over here like, oh my God.
I gotta go, man. Hey, I got a meeting I forgot about.
Oh, she was deer in the headlights, like, Like, it just absolutely froze. Whole body, absolute deer in the headlights froze. But I invited my friend over, too, because I was, again, at this point, I knew everything was done. I knew she was cheating. And I was worried about...
As a witness, basically.
A witness, yeah. False DV, false rape, all that stuff. So I'm glad I brought him over. And then from there, she actually denied everything. It was so obvious, too. We were both like, you're just full of shit. Like, you obviously are fucking this guy. I knew enough about pickup and, body language. I was like, you're definitely, this is so obvious to me, you're fucking this guy. Like, don't even deny it. And about a day and a half later, she finally owned up to it. And then she kept trying to keep me in the relationship, keep me roped in. I was like, we're done. Like, this is not a discussion. I told you fucking no on any of this shit, and you cheated. We're done. So eventually, I think in desperation or whatever other motivations, she started kind of spilling even more truth, trickle truth, we call it, in the red pill part of the Manosphere, trickle truth, right? And eventually that led to she had been cheating the whole time, on and off, with all kinds of guys. And then she let slip the prostitution thing, kind of like off the hand. I'm like, what? Come again? What was that part? And I was about to leave I left like a day later anyway. But that little slip is what led me to actually dig through. I mentioned the speech. I ended up digging through her phone records because we had like a shared account, email records, stuff like that. And that's when I found all the prostitution. So this all happened like super fast too. This happened in like 10 days. From we're together, no cheating, but I was a little bit suspicious, to one guy, to a bunch of guys, to escort-style prostitution. Yeah, and then she spent about 3 months trying to get me back. Now, she didn't know that I knew about the escorting. I kept that hidden. I kept that card in my until I put the speech out. Nobody knew that shit except some of my close friends. But for a few months until like May, I think, of 2016, she would just keep sending me nudes and all kinds of stuff and trying to elaborate messages, trying to get me back in. Everything imaginable to fucking claw me back in. Find the chink in the armor and fucking claw me back in. And fortunately, I had moved to Orlando, so I put distance between us. And 2, she didn't know where I lived, even though she was trying to find it. And 3, I had good friends, like the speakers, telling me, like, do not fucking go back to this chick. Like, if you're firm in what you believe, which they knew I was, zero cheating, like, there's no future. And I was like, that's right. So as tempting as it was to go fuck her, just to, all that kind of relationship trauma and stuff, which a lot of people do, they get roped in like that, I stayed away from it. And then she eventually, I think, gave up. And then she got engaged 2 weeks later.
To that guy?
To that guy, yeah.
and then, married him for real?
I think so. They got married in November. I don't know if it was legal or not.
He's probably all happy with himself. I got my dream girl. She was with a loser, and I totally saved her and rescued her from her horrible life. And
now the funny part is, I put the speech out like a couple days before the wedding, just because I'm a dick. So I put that out, and then she found out, and she was screaming and stuff about it, like, take it down. I'm like, nope, like, don't give a fuck. At this point, I have no idea what she's up to. She changed her last name again, obviously, and her first name. So I have no idea what she's up to.
She changed her first name.
Yeah. That's how you tell the identity crisis, the identity issues. Yeah, you changing your first name. It's pretty whack. She tried that when she was with me. When she changed her last name, she wanted to change her first name, and I found that bizarre. I'm like, no, like, you're not fucking doing that, or I'm like, we're done. Like, this is zero fucking discussion. It's weird. Unless you have a really, really, really good reason, like your parents named you like Fart or something. Short of that, I think that's pretty weird. The last name is what makes sense, obviously. But yeah, the first name, it's a big no-no. That was a red flag too. I missed. I just took that as that was a few months into the marriage. She changed her name, and the fact that she even wanted that, I thought that was weird, and I put my foot down on it. But I didn't understand the want for that is a red flag in itself. Like, why would you even want that? All of a sudden, at 30-some years old, you want to change your first name? Like, that's not your last name.
Oh, she wanted to change her first name?
Yeah.
When you guys got married?
Yeah. And so after we split up, she went and did that on her own, obviously.
Oh, wow. Got to cover her tracks for the next victim as he comes along.
It might be for the speech. I mean, obviously the speech, it has her name in it, which at the time was Marilee Johnson. At this time, I don't know what her name is. That's how crazy my ex-wife is. I don't even know what her fucking name is. Like, I literally, if you put a gun in my head and asked me what her name was and said, tell me, I don't fucking know.
She literally deleted herself from your life
on
the internet.
Well, from the internet, yeah, to hide from the speech. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's going to make it hard for her to...
I had a guy that I did a phone session with, how many years ago it was, but he'd been with his wife, I think, like 30 years, and I think they had 3 or 4, maybe it was 5 or 6 kids. He had a lot of kids, I remember that. And he was just sitting at home one time, and his best friend was over, and I think it was his daughter or his son was kind of sitting in his best friend's lap, and he was sitting there going, wow, my kid sure looks a lot like my best friend.
Oh my God. Oh.
And he's like, but, you know.
That happens, man.
At the end of the day,
Yeah.
this guy, and he was a nice guy, pretty successful. He like I said, he'd been with this chick like 30 years,
Yeah.
and she was just a nymphomaniac, fucking anyone and everyone. She'd fucked his business partner, she fucked his neighbors, she fucked all of his friends, she fucked his best friend, who was his best man at his wedding.
Yeah.
And out of his 5 or 6 kids, whatever it was, there were 2 or 3 of them that weren't even his.
Wow.
And it didn't dawn on him until he recognized that, man, my kid doesn't look anything like me, but sure looks a lot like my best friend.
Oh my God.
And then, that's, he confronted her about it, and
Yeah.
she, of course, denied it. But when he went to his other friends and people that knew, it was like the worst kept secret in the whole neighborhood. Everybody knew that she was like fucking half the neighborhood and fucking all his friends, his business partners, and he was the last guy to find out.
I think my ex-wife tried to do that. I don't think she succeeded, as far as we know. Speakers and friends and things like that. I think, though, that she was looking for the opportunity to do that, for sure. Just for the thrill of it and the kicks and all
payback.
that shit. Payback, yeah. Yeah. I mean, after.
How dare you mess up her evil plans?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know for that for a fact, but as far as I know, that didn't happen. But it's certainly, I believe firmly that was on her mind. And she was always looking, like a chess player, looking for openings and opportunities to do shit like that. Looking back on it now with the lens that I have for the relationship, like a red pill lens, so to speak. That was another interesting thing, too, is when I figured out, when it snapped for me who she was in early 2016, February or March, it was actually March by that point, it really gave me a lens to look back on the whole 4.5-year relationship, like an autopsy almost, like a relationship autopsy. And the whole relationship made a lot more sense to me then. I mean, it's been an evolution since then, a process for understanding it and growing from it. But really, it was seeing through all the layers of her masks and the fake personas and all that crap. And it's like, whoa. I now have the ability to see 4.5 years of reality rather than the fake illusion that she had presented. And it was very educational, a very extreme form of female behavior that I got to be up close and personal with.
That's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Cool. So, as you were saying?
Yeah. So I guess one of the last things I'll say is that I'm really happy that it happened. Kind of like you mentioned, it happened. No other way could have happened. In particular, too, in the some of the advice I follow from Nathaniel Branden, if you know him. He was a former lover of Ayn Rand.
Oh, no shit.
A therapist, too, psychotherapist, yeah. The original version of Atlas Shrugged was dedicated to him. She, once they split up, she fucking changed that. But the early copies will show that. Anyway, one of the things he says is that, everything that happened in your life, has led to who you are today. You need to own it, for better and for worse. So that experience has, in part, like you mentioned, led to who I am today. It was educational. It was, a very provocative story I get to put out to the world. I even had Lionsgate reach out to me at one point about doing a TV show for it. They make the movies like John Wick and stuff. So it was a hell of an experience. I learned a lot from it, and it's part of my life. You can't undo it. I'm also happy that I got to make these missing red flags and all these mistakes I made with her. I got to do that, like I mentioned earlier a little bit, in what really was a useless relationship long term. It had its meaning in my life then, and it has some lingering meaning now, like an after effect, education, and all that. But I made these mistakes with a woman who I didn't belong with. So it's like I didn't get any STDs, I didn't lose any money, nothing too serious like that, no kids or anything. So I made out, for how toxic the relationship was and how crazy she was, I made out really good. And I got to make these mistakes kind of like training wheels with a woman that ultimately didn't matter. And in the future, I know the next relationship I get into will be with a much better woman. Hard to do worse, but much better. And it'll be much healthier, more positive, fulfilling relationship. And it won't have the kinks and the problems, well, some of the kinks, but
hopefully.
None of the...
The goal is to learn and not make the same mistake over and over.
Exactly, yeah. And I got to make mistakes with a woman that just, for any number of reasons, even physically, being older than me, like I didn't belong with her. So it's a good thing that it happened, and it's a good thing that it happened with her, and that I made it out really well. Also, you mentioned, too, whether or not she loved me, and that's a tough question, dude. Just from a psychology, mental health perspective, I don't really know, if she's capable of that with me or anyone. And then how much was genuine, how much was fake, how much was played up. It's like some of that you can look at with a red pill lens and kind of see through the bullshit, but some of it is so personal and subjective to her, you don't know. You can't see inside of her head. You can just see what's on the outside, the behaviors, the mannerisms, all these things. So even in a best case scenario, it's like I really don't know.
Yeah, there's a part in my my book. I call it the attraction level table, and it goes through things that the higher woman's attraction, things that she does, and you can kind of gauge based on her actions, the things she's doing, the things she's saying, how she feels about you. Because in a long-term relationship, it's going to go up and down.
Sure.
And so it's really helpful for a lot of. It's the chapter. It's called "It's All in the Numbers" in the 3% Man book. And so it's really helpful for a lot of my people in my audience, a lot of clients, that they're able to gauge. Because if she ain't feeling it, she's just simply not going to do those things.
Yep. Yeah, in the Manosphere we say that desire cannot be negotiated. It has to be very raw, very natural. And otherwise, if you don't have that, you don't have a relationship. It's just your roommate or something.
Yep.
So
what was the title of the whole thing for people to be able to go find it and watch the whole
the full title of the speech, it's still on YouTube. Miraculously, it hasn't been banned yet or censored. Although it is censored in Australia. You can't watch it from Australia. For some reason, Australia banned it. The full title of the speech is Marrying Medusa, How to Survive a Female Psychopath. Also, one of our speakers put together a course that we filmed for him recently, and it's not from me. He's a speaker. He gave the course. That course is actually called Female Psychopaths from Surviving to Thriving. And it's for guys who went through, like me, a toxic relationship like that and how to heal from that specifically and move on and do better in life. So they can go to femalepsychopath.com to learn about that.
Femalepsychopath.com.
I'm the proud owner of femalepsychopath.com, yeah. They'll see that in the speech. I actually watermarked it with that. Because at the time I had been intending to do a blog on female psychopathy, personality disorders, and I actually put together an aggregate blog of speakers that would contribute to that. At the end of the day, I'm not going to do that. We're doing the product instead. My friend's doing it. But it's the same intent to help men who've been through like super toxic relationships like that. Not just a bad breakup with some girl you met at a bar, like a really noxious, fucked up relationship. People get hurt. There's criminal stuff going on, prostitution, sugar babying, shit like that, or violence and beyond. So a lot of men go through it. I mean, there's a good chunk of men and women who have real personality disorders that are super toxic and dangerous. And they're predators. Like I mentioned in the value thing, they're like a negative. They exist beneath the surface. And you've got to watch out. And as a man today, too, it's not...
Haste makes waste, as they say.
Yeah, take things slow.
Watch being attached to your outcome.
Yeah.
Because we tend to project our fantasy onto the person and what we want, and then we look for reasons to justify why they fit it. And then when these little things come up, it's just like, but the connection's so great, the sex is amazing, we jive so well. I'm going to go ahead and move in. I know we've only been dating a month, but it's meant to be. The universe has prearranged it, and it's amazing, and it's going to be amazing, and we're amazing, and it's going to be awesome. And turn out great.
Everything's amazing until it blows up in your face.
Yeah. So you got to take your time. I've done so many videos over the years where... That's the biggest part of the problem with a lot of guys is they're too fucking impatient. They want the relationship now, they want the marriage now, they want the kids now, they want the business success now, they want the CEO job now. It's like you have to go through a set of steps. You can't put the cart before the horse. Because if you do, you end up having a marrying Medusa.
That's right. One of our speakers, Nick Sparks, used to say that fires that burn fast tend to burn out. Fires that burn slow, they tend to last, quite a bit longer. So I agree with you 100%. Like, slow the fuck down, especially for a relationship, but really anything in life. I agree. It takes time. I've been running my business now, for example, for almost 14 years, 13 and a half years. And, most businesses fail by 10 years, like 95% of them or something like that.
4 to 5 years is what most of them have failed by.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it takes time. And it takes other things too, courage, dedication, persistence. But really, if you just have patience with these things, I think it works out a lot better. Like, I've been single now for 4 years, and that's so long the girls get, like, really curious about that when they find that out. They're like, why are you single for so long? Because they're, for whatever, reasons they have for getting curious about it. But I think being single for so long is actually setting me up for a really good relationship. Because I've been navigating the marketplace in the meantime, watching how the world's been changing with Me Too and all this crap, and feminism in America. But also learning about myself, healing from my own, experiences and trauma and stuff, is growing as a man and figuring out, like, what do I want? Like, I do want a family and kids and these things, but it's like, okay, at what point In what way and with what kind of woman do I want to be the mother of my children? That's a really serious endeavor to take on. And
That's a 20 year plus commitment.
That's right. And I almost fucked that up last time, marrying a prostitute in Vegas. So I prefer not to fuck that up again. And I do know, for example, that the chances of divorce for like a second marriage and third are pretty bad. They're even worse than the first. So knowing, some of the basic stats on that, knowing the challenges that, as a young man you have to overcome today, there's a lot on the table to learn about. And at 31, I'm not in a rush. As eager as I am to start a family, I know that it's more important to be patient and slow the fuck down, take my time, be single as long as I want, and in the meantime, have fun. There's plenty of women out there waiting for me, and men
Hang
like
out,
me.
have fun, and hook up, as I always say. The
Yeah.
3 H's.
Yep.
It's the magic formula.
Yeah, and people come after me for hooking up with girls still, even though we promote more traditional things for men and women and stuff sometimes. And I'm like, I didn't cause these girls. I didn't make these girls hook up with me. They did this on their own. And especially if they already banged 20, 30 guys, I had nothing to do with you banging these guys. That was 100% your choice as a woman. Now you want me to be 31, all right, I'm
You're
down.
an equal opportunity seducer.
I'm an equal opportunity seducer. That's right. That's right. I don't take responsibility for other people's actions. I'm responsible for my choices and my behavior. I was, significantly responsible for my experience with Medusa. I walked into that not knowing any better and whatnot, but it's my job as a young man to know better. And, I failed to do that in some ways, and that had consequences. But it's the same thing for young women, I'm not responsible for the actions my ex-wife took that I was not even aware of. This is a person who was dedicated to that kind of behavior, was not going to change it for anyone, including me, and including anyone else, as far as I know. And young women today, too, I'd hooking up, I want you to change, I think you should do better than that. I think women, for example, should have as much sex as possible over a lifetime with as few men as possible. That seems to be a recipe, loosely speaking, for happiness for them. But you don't want to listen, you want to bang a bunch of dudes on Tinder, go ahead. You're going to find out the hard way that's
the older you get,
idea.
the more you appreciate quality relationships and quality people. When you're
That's right.
younger,
That's
you know, especially when I was in my 20s, I had a lot more people I thought were my friends, but they were really just acquaintances.
Yeah.
And it's as you go through some ups and downs in life, you realize who's really on your team and who's just there for the free shit or the significance or the clients or the money or whatever whatever it is that they're getting from you.
That was the thing too when I had the divorce, so to speak, and went to Orlando. It's who's going to step up and support me when I was hurting the worst, and who just is kind of come back out of it and move away from it. So it was a litmus test for people in my life. And much to my pleasure, most people in my life stood up very strongly for me. Whatever I needed to help me out. Even Socrates, one of our speakers, he gave me a place to live at his house for 2 weeks before I found a place to live. So it took me in immediately, insisted on it even. And he had a newborn baby at the time too, Elizabeth Grace, his little daughter. So I was living in this house. It's a big house, but he had a 4-week-old baby, and I had just moved in after divorcing a hooker. And I'd known these people. I'd known the wife and obviously the guy and stuff. So yeah, people stepped up for me, and it was good to see that. And that was a result of building strong, positive relationships in my life. People would not just freak out and abandon me or the conference. People thought the conference would fall apart, the convention, because the founder had messed up and married this crazy BPD hooker. And that was not the case. The speech is done super well. It's one of the highest viewed videos in the whole channel. The highest one is, we have videos over 1 million, but mine's done really well at 400,000. And the conference has moved on. We've had, I don't even know, half a dozen conferences since then or something like that, conventions. We've had 18 total now. We've had bigger and better speakers, since then. Stefan Molyneux, FBI agents, Navy SEALs, all kinds of stuff.
And what is the website? How do the people get in touch with that?
Yeah, they go to the21convention.org, the21convention.org, or on YouTube, they go to youtube.com/21 or search for 21 Studios.
Cool.
And they'll find all that stuff.
And again, if you haven't read my books yet, you can read them both for free. Go to understandingrelationships.com. All you gotta do is subscribe to the email newsletter, press the submit button, and you'll be reading it right on whatever device. And if you'd like to book a coaching session with yours truly, especially if you're in a situation similar to what President Johnson was in, you're going, something's a little squirrely here.
Yeah. That's
a big part of what I do with phone sessions with people because I'm an unattached, unemotional person that can see things for what they really are. And at this point, I think I've talked to tens of thousands of dudes over the years, done phone sessions with. So most things I've heard many, many, many times. So just go to understandingrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen. And until next time, we will talk to you soon.